Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is an alternate universe strange road winter solstice. I hope you guys are having a good day like I am. We got to hear from Michael Toohey. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview with him. And also Thomas Johnson's Impact Crater Tour. My partner Kyle and I got a chance to go down to Serpent Mound earlier this week and shoot all that with Thomas. Kyle did a heck of a job flipping that, and it looks great, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And we're here with the legendary Ross Hamilton coming to you live from Cincinnati, Ohio. And Ross is an author, researcher, and has written books, The Mystery of the Serpent Mound, Star Mounds, and my personal favorite, A Tradition of Giants. Not too long ago, The Strange Road did an episode for our Strange Road Detours, and we featured Ross's book, Tradition of Giants, and did a ton of research, and I guess you could consider him the OG of the giant world in America, in my personal opinion. And, you know, let's get right to it. Ross is right here with me, and how you feeling today, Ross?
Well, I'm feeling really good. It's winter
Great.
solstice. It's the actual Christmas of yesteryear. And over the many, many years since the pagans practiced that all over the world, doubtless, we've added more days to it because we enjoy it so much. There's something really magical about this time of year. And I guess Joseph Campbell was the first one to publicly sort of give us notice that when the sun has its shortest stint from the southeastern sky to the southwestern sky, that's symbolic of the death of the sun. And then the next day, it's the rebirth of the sun, and the days gradually get longer in the growing season. So I'm sure people that are savvy on that particular bit of wisdom know that there's much more to it, and it's an awful lot of fun to contemplate. But for those who celebrate it, happy solstice, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year tomorrow and a week from Christmas again. Anyway, we're here today to talk about my favorite subject, and actually it's the only subject that I've ever written about, and by extension, subjects like the very tall people that I think has become more appreciated over the years. Mike here, who's the boss of this crew that's come into my house, he asked me to give a little bit about my background, and I could go on for a long time about my master, but my master is with me here today. You won't see him embodied sitting on the couch next to me. And in fact, he passed away physically from the earth way back in 1974. But I did, as my master asked me, and his other initiates, or chelas, as they're known in India. And because of that, he has graciously given me a great deal of information having to do with my mission. And my mission is to, number one, take incarnation in the United States, because I wasn't in the United States in my last life. And number two, find out about the prehistory before the white man and the Europeans came. What was really going on here? And why is it so important towards the furthering of our spirituality to learn what was going on here? And when push came to shove, even though a lot of what we're going to discuss today has to do with apparently other subjects, really it boils down to having its beginnings with the serpent and its image. And I want to say right away, for those of you who think the serpent is something out of the Old Testament that is to be scrupulously avoided. I think if you look at other cultures, including the New Testament, Lord Jesus, you'll see that Christ didn't condemn the serpent. He said that they were cunning. And in the Old Testament, we see that the serpent was involved in giving complete knowledge, which means knowledge that had receded into the subconscious, or forbidden knowledge, to the couple, Adam and Eve. But that the serpent that we'll be discussing today is not a dark entity. And in fact, if you listen closely and you study this subject for a long time, you'll see that this serpent and the serpent of Eden are so much alike that it's worthwhile exploring Native American legend and roots to see if perhaps there wasn't something similar to a garden here in eastern North America. And the reason I say that is because one of the things I learned from my master was that India, which is the spiritual capital of the world and has been for more thousands of years than we can go back, which includes ancient China and Tibet and parts of the Himalayas and into Persia, which is modern-day Iran. And that culture didn't really originate there, but it came from the eastern United States and Canada, eastern North America. And when this culture that I'm speaking of that was once here, which was called Manitoba, which, by the way, had its capital on Turtle Island, so Native Americans remember this great civilization that was here simply as Turtle Island, because even oral tradition, which helps to preserve memory, has forgotten a lot. Of course, this happened to all human people. And part of my work is to reestablish certain points of the philosophy of the masters so that Native American people, especially their medicine societies, and I especially put a lot of hope in the Cherokee and the Iroquois and the Lakota Dakota people, the Nakota, we can begin to reconstruct Turtle Island's history. Because right now, we can't. It's not written down, but deep in our memories, deep in the memory of the human heart and of the soul itself, which we can delve into through meditation, we can find the libraries, which we call the etheric or the Akash record. Akash means etheric. And we'll discuss that a little bit, hopefully, tonight as well. We can, if we make ourselves still enough and petition the great librarian through love, that's your library card, we can begin to prove that the capital of Great Manitoba was and is called Mackinac, which is now just a tourist attraction. The other thing that is very fundamental toward the reestablishing of the history of Turtle Island is understanding that the world we live in now is not the world of the grandmothers and the grandfathers. Their world wasn't so steeped in the restoral of the illusion which happened when the holy ones began to incarnate in India, and only a few were left to incarnate among the tribes here in eastern North America. And that's why India prospered spiritually, literally gave birth to all the philosophies underscoring all the major religions and philosophies of the world, especially in the East. And that includes Shinto, which was very prevalent, a form of Shinto. In fact, the foundation of Shinto came from Native Americans. But that understanding of what the Japanese have preserved as Shinto is only a fragment of what they enjoyed here in Eastern North America long ago. So you may ask, how long ago was that? Well, obviously, Turtle Island had to have existed at least 6,000 years ago, and more than likely its zenith, which lasted approximately 1,200 years, takes us back to closer to 7,000 years ago. About 5,000 years ago, most of the medicine lodges that enabled people to walk into the good lands, that what we now call the happy hunting grounds, were closed down. And it was because of the Manitou system not working any longer, because the jewels were removed from the altars and the pyramids, the capstones were removed, and their technology was temporarily put back into use into Egypt and Guatemala and other parts of the world, but shortly after it died out everywhere. And so the illusion returned, the covering over the astral body of the earth was completely returned, and it was only the manufacture through the Manitou system of the etheric essence, what native people call the mana, all over the world, which is where the term Manitou doubtless was derived. That essence is what sustained the dissolution of the gross physical and revealed, especially at points where the mana was being manufactured, and Serpent Mound was one of the main production points of the mana at one time, because the serpent was a sort of holy machine, if you will, a spiritual machinery that learned to distill the energy from the clouds of the sky, very negative charge and abundance, with the very positive charge of Mother Earth, both charges being created through a single magnetic field, which we call the spirit of Mother Earth. At least that's how they knew it. We now think of it as a separate thing, and we don't understand it very well. But in those days, they knew there was more than just protection from the sun, but it was a major ingredient in making the medicine. So once the mana was made and kept hermetically sealed securely in what was once an egg-like feature of the serpent. The serpent is really just the platform on which the Manitou once rested. Then that essence begins to go down all the coils, fills them up. So according to native legend, the serpent was all covered with beautiful semi-precious stones and quartzes and mother of pearl and everything that had a good electrical stimulus and preserving quality. And then from the serpent, the landscape gradually, very gradually, became saturated with that spiritual essence, and the country turned into paradise. It was decloaked. Paradise was decloaked. So paradise exists, it's there, but we are blind. We can't see it unless we switch on the Manitou system. Did you have a question?
Yeah, the Manitou system to me involves, a lot of your work with archaeoastronomy and these alignments. My question is, what would the winter solstice or the summer solstice or any of these alignments, why was it so important to the Manitoba civilization, and why would they go through so much trouble to align this serpent to all of these different planetary bodies? It seems like they went through quite a bit of work and were quite obsessed and brilliant. What is the purpose and part of that machine.
Well, yeah, it is part of the machine.
And we do have an image here with the...
Yeah, you want to show that first image?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have it up already? Well, there's a picture of the Serpent Mound. It's from a map that was created by Dr. William F. Romaine, who is an old friend and sometimes an acquaintance when we disagree on things. But he created that map, and then it was backed up by the Wilson LiDAR, which was created by Jeffrey Wilson back in 2011. Bill Romaine created that map back in 1987. Just imagine, a lot of you out there weren't born yet. And Bill always gets a kick at how old we've gotten so quickly. But that's a very accurate map, and that purple line you see going from the upper left down to the lower right of that double square rectangle, and complemented by the circle in the center, which fits into either one of the two squares, is a north-south line. So the north is up in the upper left and the south is the lower right. Now, once Romaine was actually able to establish that north-south line, nobody else had, because compasses, as many of you know, give incorrect readings at the Serpent Mound because of, after all, it is an ancient meteor crater, and there are probably large pieces of iron or whatever, magnetic materials, and then there's a big tower there, which probably doesn't account for the major diversion, which gets up to 11 degrees. I've seen as much as 11 degrees off true north with compasses. And so he established that through a solar sighting. And of course, most satellite maps will show you true north. And so we were able to confirm that with Jeffrey Wilson's LiDAR. And so we have a really scientifically accurate north alignment and serpent representation there. So if you notice, the circle contains 3 of its coils that all face to the eastward, and they touch exactly on the edges of that circle. Of course, this is only one of 100 such geometrics that I've been able to construct that display the utility the serpent seems to have because of its approximate, very approximate golden ratio underscoring with any number of geometric equations. And so because the sun and the moon arise in the east, and because they all arise in mathematically coordinated with the Earth and the Earth's magnetic field means, we oftentimes get these remarkable coincidences. So along with the magnetic field, you see going through the coiled helix at the base of the serpent, which is southward, you see a blue line, and that blue line follows the winter solstice alignment. In other words, where the winter solstice rises in the lower eastern part of the horizon at Serpent Mound Park, that blue line faces toward it, going out that way. Now, that's only possible, that north-south line and the circle, if you have that particular rectangle. You see, so there's always a little mystery with each one of these geometrics. You want to turn up the next one?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we're doing right now is explaining the importance of the serpent.
Yeah.
And then we'll try to get back into more about Gitche Manitoba.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the coming of the celestial Christ power, which is not affiliated with any religion particularly. So let's get that out of our thoughts right away, because that is a universal power of the great anointing.
So during these times, Ross, the summer solstice, winter solstice, are they just able to gather more of this mana during these times? Is this just...
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Because the mana really came from the spirit of the earth. They literally knew how to distill the magnetic field of the earth by taking the positive and negatively charged particles of the sky, with the water vapors and the gases, and the charged particles of the Earth, because the magnetic field serves as a sort of armature that's constantly running through the atmosphere and the Earth itself, and it produces equal and opposite charges. And that is the magnetic field converted into electrical forces, which is subsequently converted through the use of water into mana. We don't do that anymore. I want you people out there to know, and many of you are Native American or have it in your bloodline, and that should impress you, that your ancestors, our ancestors, even though I don't have a drop of native blood, because it was once all over the world, were able to do this. And this medicine will grant you longevity. And if you're really smart about it, you can live longer than you can imagine using this technology. But anyway.
So you say this was all over the world. So
yeah,
you go to a lot of sites, whether it's Egypt, you can go down to Mexico, and you can see these alignments. So many ancient sites all over the world.
I mean,
they all have something similar with these times of years, the winter solstice, the summer solstice. And so it seems to be this kind of universal geometry and this universal knowledge that maybe at one time came from one place. Or I shouldn't say one place, it's just a larger...
One place.
Yeah,
it did.
And so people were, would you say, more connected consciously to each other, to where maybe they weren't necessarily traveling to share all this information, but they were, this information was able to spread very rapidly and ended up all over the world eventually.
Yeah, it did. But it goes through phases. Like the masters teach us that in the beginning, the whole earth was an open paradise. When the earth had cooled enough to have civilization arise on it, then it was seeded by a universal consciousness, a sort of family of archangelic intelligences visited all of the stars and all of the galaxies. It was a major project, and it took a long time to complete. But as each planet and each star system was colonized, and a few of those elders remained on the planet to see to it that when the children came, when the God or the universal power began to release the just trillions and trillions of souls to these schools where you can go through various embodiments as mineral and plant and animal to finally get the human form, then those worlds turned into literally schools. And that's when everything began to really take off. If I seem to lose my train of thought, it's because I'm trying to get ahead. But in any event, on this particular picture, we have that same angle of alignment, but it's up, splitting the sun disk, which is what we believe it is, or was serving as, in a practical sense, in the mouth of the serpent, and it was reverberating with the universal logos, or the voice of the universe, by which everything springs into manifestation, and by which everything eventually will fall into dissolution, all the way up to the causal worlds. So when you take the center of that circle, okay, the actual center of that circle, and you establish that north-south line that we showed you before, that goes from the apex of the hollow triangle of the head feature down to the tip of the tail. And that's the one Romaine discovered, and Wilson was able to confirm. Then the shaft of the summer solstice rising sun, not the shaft of the winter solstice rising sun, but the shaft of the summer solstice rising sun can be seen. And that's why I made it a yellow line, you see? And what gives it a little bit of mystery is that when you put that dividing line, that magnetic dividing line, that North Star dividing line there, everything to the left of that line on the yellow line, if it's valued at 1, is complemented by the other part of the golden ratio, which is that yellow line to the right, to the edge of the circle. So everything from either extreme of the circle of that yellow line is divided into 2 parts, the left part with a big blue 1, and, the right part, and the left part with a big blue 618. That's the golden ratio, and that is the mathematic of the holy ether. The golden ratio is the average of all numbers, and it occurs in everything, everywhere, all the time. And the serpent is probably one of the finest designs ever developed. Some say it was made by God, but it's definitely the most receptive to variations of the golden ratio in geometric form.
Why would they, I mean, it's so perfect, the geometry and the mathematics and so sophisticated. I mean, the people that built these sites, what was their fascination? I mean, why would you go through so much time and energy to create these? And here in Ohio, there's so many. I mean, Serpent Mound is just one. There are just incredible, which we have some charts that we can go through eventually as well, that show all these different sites all over Ohio that are connected with other star systems as well. And so, can you try to explain to us the importance of the trouble that they went through?
Okay, well, let's move on to the next picture.
Okay.
We'll keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on the next picture, we have a picture of the serpent as it lays across Draconis. Now, if you can't see it clearly on your screen, every major star, every bright star, and some that aren't so bright, and the upper asterism of Draconis falls onto the margins of the Romaine and Wilson map. It's really a perfect fit, if you will, and it seems to have dictated the actual design of the serpent, which is incomprehensible to the human mind, except that on this planet, when we look at those stars, the designer was able, by filling in the serpent's coils with those stars, to create something that holds to a mathematically and geometrically and astronomically pure entity. Can you comprehend that? You have to be you have to be a genius. I think if your IQ is up around 160 and above, you could probably comprehend that, because you would know the potential of the human mind. But most of us are, well, I guess the average IQ is something below 130 or 140. So most people find that fascinating as a mystery. And it really is still. But what I'm saying is, whoever designed the serpent was really bright and really knew what she or he was doing. So let's move on to the next one.
Sure.
This one is pretty much another phenomenon that has to do with the serpent celestial. There's the serpent on the right side again, and you'll notice that the pole star, which we'll get to in the next picture, I believe, is that red dot in the lower part beneath the 7th coil from the tail of the serpent. Now the distance between the coil, where there's another red dot, straight up from that, and over to the extreme right, where that triangular,
Polaris and Thuban.
Where that triangular mound is, and then Polaris is on that circle, along with Tuban. They're both pole stars. that circle is really where we see the top of the night sky. And over about a 26,000 year period, you're going to see lights either right on that circle or close to it, directly north, true north from us. Now, if you look at the picture on the left, the center of that circle is called the node or the center of the circle of the ecliptic. So it's called by astronomers the NEP, the North Ecliptic Pole. And there's nothing there. It's just calculated when we know what the circle looks like once it's scrawled mathematically on the surface of the night sky. In the center, right in the middle of the serpent's coil, when you arrange the stars of Draco so that the pole star for the serpent is still beneath the coil, it's very much like the picture you just saw. It holds to the true pattern. In fact, some say it's a little better. But it's right in the tail. And the way the tail uncoils, and this is fascinating, is the way of precession. The way the series of pole stars
It's
go.
showing the motion of the precession.
Yep.
Wow.
Now, whoever designed that probably was more than just a genius, probably was what we call in our inner circles a son of God, which can be a man or a woman, because a person can reach perfection to the point where they become a saint, and then they can become what's called a master saint. And a master saint, which is usually a male for a reason that I'll explain at another time, although it's not a patriarchic type of male, a master saint is merged with God, with the absolute power of all the universe, so that a designer, a trained designer, who is also a master of God consciousness or pure consciousness, can figure something like this out just by putting his or her attention to it.
Wow.
So it's a mystery for us to contemplate if you understand that there is a philosophy underscoring all this. Let's go to the next one.
Sure. This might be my favorite one.
Okay, so this is not the same circle as the NEP. This is the Tuban circle, and according to Cherokee mythology, the great serpent, or the Octina, as recorded by Moody from the Smithsonian, had, I think we get it from other sources too, other tribal traditions, that the center, or where the heartbeat of the serpent was beneath the seventh coil. Now, if we consider the pole star 5,000 years ago, when I believe this was built, the serpent was constructed in memory of Manitoba, of the demise of Manitoba and the loss of Turtle Island consciousness. This picture was devised, and they put the pole star dead center of that circle, and the serpent fits perfectly inside of it. Its tail on one part, which is where the current pole star is right now, and the tip of the serpent's head, or it's like the distended lower jaw, that triangular feature. Both of those are equidistant from the pole star beneath the seventh coil. Now, that little triangular feature is really a pointing device, but it doesn't point to anything on the landscape. We've tried, and we can't find any, at the site, at Serpent Mound Park, it doesn't line up with any of the temple mounds or any of the great lodges, or any, maybe a burial mound, but we're not aware of it because so many of them were destroyed. But it was made, I think, as an indicator of what age we're in. So if you look at this picture, you'll see the time of the conception of the Serpent Mound's sculpting, which was the last great instrument that could still distill and manufacture the medicine.
Wow.
And it's where Taurus gives way to Aries on our calendar by precession. Now, because the sun rises in the same place in the sky everywhere in the world, most especially at the equator probably, but everywhere, you're going to have, maybe with the exception of the North and South Pole, you're going to have the same stars come up on the horizon. So I had a young woman criticize me on a post I had put in on the Facebook site, Friends of Serpent Mound, that, oh, you're giving the European or the Greek version of the constellations and attributing them to Native Americans with the same stars. And how could that possibly be? And I said, well, she wasn't an astronomer. And I learned from an astronomer who happens to be Jeff Wilson as well, that indeed those lodges, which starting with where the serpent is pointing to the line coming down, that's the cusp or the between zone between what we call the Hopewell site, which is over closer to the Scioto River Valley, and the Butler County effigy, which I know Brad Lepper would disagree with this, but it's an effigy to a wild boar. If you turn the Squire and Davis the right way, you can see the tusks of the boar and the ear and the tail and the big fat belly and the feet in a gallop, and it's obviously a wild pig of some sort. And so that marked the time about 5,000 years ago. So I arranged that, and then after that, you see the Newark earthworks. And so I guess it was 2,160 years passed, and then we got into Pisces. And all those stars match perfectly with the Newark earthworks. And I mean perfectly. All of these do, because Native Americans actually were able to, before the Greeks, as far as we know, before the Babylonians, even before the Egyptians and so forth, were able to correlate pictures with the same stars that we attribute to the Greeks. So Native people, you can be proud of that, even though there are many people who don't understand it well enough to agree and say that this is just borrowed from the Europeans. No, it was authored originally by Native Americans, but it was a worldwide phenomenon, and so other cultures that visited Manitoba and Turtle Island on a visitor's visa to learn the technologies here, to take back, they also took back their knowledge of astronomy and astrology. They were the same science. And so the people created these temple mounds and lived in and around them and had their ancestors buried in burial mounds nearby them, sometimes within their halls, to honor them, because each one was a special city dedicated to a celestial star group. And the Pleiades are just one part of one of these. So you can see how well versed they were. They had at least 12 or 13 great houses or lodges that they had in Manitoba, and there were probably thousands of people that dedicated their lives to each of these lodges. And each lodge was able to make the medicine, and each lodge was an extension of the powers, the geometries, in other words, the architectures, and the astronomies of the Serpent Mound. So all of the mathematics, the geometries, the astronomies, whether they're stellar or solar or lunar or planetary, you can find them all in these surroundings. Then we pass through Pisces, and the serpent would then move up with that golden disk up to the beginnings of the next one, and that would be Aquarius. See, we're going by precession. And so 2,160 years passed. We went through the pig. Then we went through the great Newark complex. And then now we're starting in the great High Bank complex. Now, if you're going by a yearly, it would be go the opposite. We would be somewhere up around the next one that comes after High Bank, which is the junction group, which is Capricornus. And then before that is Sagittarius. So we'd be going actually clockwise if we were finding the yearly horoscope, but we're going counterclockwise so we can explain how these people lived in these lodges, and we were able, through stretching out these lodges on kind of like a straight path where you can see the sun going through them, we can see how they were able to leave us a timetable for some of their major events. In theory, but looks like it's probably true. And so as you keep going, after the age of Aquarius is the age of Capricornus, then the age of Sagittarius, and then Scorpius. And then Scorpius is Fort Ancient. And then you have the Hopeton Earthworks, which are Libra, and so forth. Leo is the Granville effigy. And it's, all these places were modeled after lodges that were once much larger. Now, the smallest of all these, most of them are gigantic, but the smallest of all these is the one dedicated to Leo, and Native Americans made it into like a great cat, or something along the lines of a cat-like creature, according to some opinions. And I believe it was probably much larger at one time, but that somehow it was destroyed, and so they commemorated it into a smaller effigy. But it fits otherwise right along with the lane of the ecliptic and the sun passing through it. So having known that, let's move on to the next picture.
Sure, absolutely. This is a really interesting one. This is kind of the star map that's stretched out widescreen, so you can kind of see all the precession, if you will.
Exactly. You see the precession of the equinoxes, which is the movement of the sun.
You've got all the earthworks laid over top.
Yeah.
And
what we're seeing here is a more linear expression of what I just described to you as the circle, with the serpent in its center, because the serpent represents the bringing of the sun and conversion of the sunlight into medicine for us to live long and prosper, so to speak. And on the upper, you see the earthworks are all in green. So in the upper left, you have let me get my glasses here.
No problem.
The upper left, you have the same one that we talked to in the beginning on the circle one, which is that boar-like figure, the big pig gig that they had, which is a lodge that's still located fairly intact, but not the same as when they mapped it up in Hamilton, Ohio, and that was just sold, by the way. It was 3 properties, but it was bought, so we'll be able to keep the effigy together, which is a rare event nowadays.
Right.
Most of them have been destroyed. And then following that is the Newark earthwork again. And of course, I'm going by the regular calendar, the yearly calendar. And then the next one would be the High Bank earthwork, which is Aquarius. And then the junction group, which is Capricornus. And then this one's really amazing because of all the ones that fit perfectly, this one fits the most perfectly. That's Sagittarius, and it goes to the Liberty Earthworks, which is completely destroyed now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start the uphill. This is the sun running through all these lodges. So if you're Scorpius and your sun sign, you would have lived in this lodge, this Fort Ancient, which is big enough to hold 1,000 people easily. And that star is Scorpius, as you would have thought, a star, and then Star Center. And then you move into the Hopeton earthwork, which is pretty completely destroyed now, but that fits cunningly, beautifully with Libra, and I try to explain that in star mounds, why it's so cunning, because it matches up with Fort Ancient, even though they're distanced by many miles on the Earth. They work together with their star patterns beautifully. And then the Works East earthwork, which is also completely destroyed, fits into what is the sorry that it's slipping my mind.
You're fine.
It's the most feminine of all the astrological charts. I don't know. We'll go back to it.
Okay.
And then we come to Leo, and excuse me if I forgot your sun sign there. And then the bomb earthworks signify the Cancer, and then the sleeping Thunderbird, that's the wing of the Thunderbird, is characterized as Gemini. And then you start over, I believe, with the big pig. So anyway, what's the name of that? If it comes back to me, I'll interrupt myself.
It'll pop back up.
Yeah, so if you lay them out, you can see how whoever designed them was able to do it in such a way where they would all fit together in the sky and they wouldn't overlap, but in a very small way, if at all. And the only one, oddly enough, that does overlap in any meaningful way is Leo, which is the one I think they reconstructed because it had been destroyed. So Brad Lepper, if you're listening to this, it may have been made by the Fort Ancient people, indeed. But I believe it was something that they commemorated from an older version. So I know you're going to disagree with that, but you're right. I mean, you tested it with carbon, and yet I think I can add a little bit more to that lore by stipulating that maybe they rebuild it along with many of the other ones, because these were originally made 5,000 years ago, or more or less, when the Serpent was created. And at that time, a crew of people took stone and they laid out the outlines for all of these earthworks. And then when the Adena and Hopewell people came, 2,500 years later, after 5,000 years ago, 3,000 BC, I think they may have started with the Serpent Mound, which was just a bunch of boulders and laid out there, and they created the first serpent that was reconstructed. I think it had a predecessor that was able to make the medicine, or they figured out how to make the medicine again at that time. That's not clear yet. But in any case, they reconstructed, if they hadn't already been constructed and there was just dirt and stone. But I believe that when they originally made the Serpent 5,000 years ago, that they went around and laid out the stone designs that the Adena and Hopewell put basket loads of earth and clay over. And that was their work, you see. It was all dictated to them by their medicine people who were more cosmically conscious, and so were in touch with the ancestors. And I know you white scholars out there, I don't want to tell you that you're wrong, but the PhDs that you've gotten, your training that you've gotten, and please forgive me, but you didn't get it from the master teachers, the saints of India, or people that have been trained by those people that have a clearer vision of what occurred, because we have access to those libraries, if you will. And that's how I've gotten this knowledge. It's not that I'm that smart. I probably have an average IQ, if you want to measure me by IQ. But it's just that I meditate the bejesus out of my spirit and my soul. And so I have access, and I have evolved, so to speak. And so I know that a lot of what I must present as theory is probably provable if you were able to check my theories by clarifying your own intellect through meditation. Deep, long, loving, enjoyable meditations. Just start the habit now, especially if you're young. By the time you're an old geezer like me, you will have been blessed by a certain modicum of cosmic consciousness. So, in any event, let's go on to the next one. And one of the things about this next one that's interesting is that even though we don't show it, that's the flower of life. And the serpent fits precisely upon it. And so on those points between the coils, there are asterisk-like conjunctions. And the serpent misses them all cunningly until you see one in the oval bowl and you see one at the back of the neck. And I just outfitted it like it was a jewel, and the serpent was laying across it. That's just for art's sake. So if you look at the Mystery of the Serpent Mound, you'll see a plain version of it with a serpent on it, and you can see how the serpent fits perfectly on the great seal of life, and that each one of those is detectable through mechanical means. If you put a large quartz crystal or a quartz-bearing stone over any one of those power points in the park, and check to make sure you've got it right, using a regular camera microphone or a really sensitive microphone, you can pick up a sound coming from the crystal. And it's manufactured by a system that is in the astral earth that vivifies these sort of hexagonal islands, if you will, with electrical energy that is spawned by the movement of this mana, this liquid light, through these. And then they're all connected across the landscape, all over the world. And that's why you're able to make so many different designs on the sphere of the world. Oh, the world looks like a soccer ball. Oh, the world looks like this sacred site connected with this sacred site. Oh, the world looks like this other sacred site connected. And you can do that in so many different ways using various points that turn into viable geometrics. Because there's so many of these little flowers of life that are in reality actual islands that maintain the spiritual body of the earth. So again, the earth that we see is like a holographic illusion, which is real enough because our bodies are made of that substance. And once that illusion is erased, like our ancestors were able to do in a limited sense, Manitoba was entirely released from its illusion for a period of several years, I think 3 years. The golden, the astral earth was recognizable, but then the illusion pretty much covers most everything except really intense areas. And those are like the 7 great cities of the astral world that make up the body of a great phoenix, which we think of as the Great Seal of the United States. And it copies, in the Revelation to John, you have the 24 elders sitting around the throne. That's the same as the flower of life. And that they cast their crowns. So each one of the 4 points on each of the 6 sides of the hexagon shoots out a straight line, which matches with another line, and they all crisscross to form 37 eyes. And this is all in the Revelation to John. And so when you multiply the 37 eyes by the 24 outside lines, you get the figure 8, 8, 8. And that was a sacred number to the people that made these beautiful Manitous, if you will. Because that number 888, when doubled, is 1776. So that was a sacred number to the Masons, who received their tradition from a far older tradition that stems back to our earliest civilized tenets, which isn't that far back with our history. We've burned so many libraries and upturned so many graves that it's no wonder anthropologists say there were no giants, you're full of nonsense, you know. And I was lucky to get my book out 10 years before the anthropologists saw it, because they just tore in to, well, not so much mine, but to all the other people who had been inspired by our original book, which I did with Vine Deloria and Jake Swamp and Albert Whitehat and a number of others, including the lovely Joanne Shenandoah, who I think has won a Grammy by this time. The singer whose work, his name is Doug George Kentil. I believe you pronounce your last name, Doug George. And everybody that was there, plus a lot that I'm not mentioning, agreed that their people had very large versions of human beings living as their chosen, as their teachers, their medicine artists, and their chieftains of various levels in a tribal system, and that larger stature gradually was reduced, especially after the white man came.
I mean, there was modern accounts from Magellan in Patagonia. De Soto came up through the rivers and from the Gulf into the United States and reported in more modern times some accounts, and who knows if those stories were made up but you can kind of see them written. Early explorers of Americas, had written, drawn up sketches and written about those. And like I said, you're looking down right now.
Well, they ignored those. The anthropologists haven't bothered reading.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I think...
the Magellan account's very interesting.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I think there are several from Spanish explorers.
Yeah. In America, De Soto came up through Georgia and Alabama. And I know recently we went to the Etowah Mounds in Georgia on the way back from a shoot that we had down there. And I was blown away.
But most of the men were 7-footers down there.
Yeah.
But again, I'm sure that the archaeologists, the anthropologists say, well, Ross, we're sorry, but it's just not in the data. Mm-hmm. Well, look at the Smithsonian accounts. After Ales Hrdlicka, who we were the first ones to discover, even though we're not credited with it anymore, after the first physical anthropologist took seat at the Smithsonian back in the very early 20th century, about 1910, I think, Hrdlicka, he was a member of the Eugenics Society, if that gives you a clue.
Yeah. They were all about manifest destiny and pushing.
Yeah. Get rid of the black people, marginalize the Native American people. We don't want the white people's blood to get mixed in with them. When it turns out we could do a lot better if we did, because they have some very great genetics, very strong genetics. That we could all benefit from if we were careful and loving about, choosing our mates.
Sure.
Have it done through love and deep meditation, and, let God choose your mate and pray that you have a child that is blessed spiritually. Doesn't matter what your skin color is. I'm one of those people who has a Black Lives Matter sign out in their front yard. And nobody's broken it down yet, but that's partly because I live in an integrated neighborhood.
Yeah.
But other parts of the city, it's been torn down. You can't keep it up. because we have these racial divides and ethnic divides and divides according to how much money you got in your bank account, when really we are so much alike that if you would give up your differences of opinion and just get loving a little bit more than you are, celebrate Christmas all the time, all year round. You won't succeed the first year, but you will after 2 or 3 years. And be gentle and kind, follow the golden rule. Then men like L.S. Herdlichka will not come back into power, ever. Because we know better in our heart of hearts what the true meaning or spirit of the solstice is. Let's get the next one up.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, we're really not that much different. And if they found out how, that the powers that be that it seems are constantly trying to divide us over race, religion, gay, straight, black, white, and if that people wake up to the fact that we are so much more similar than what they show us on TV, they show us in the media, whether it's Facebook arguments or people getting in fights with each other that have never met, and it's
right.
sort of controlled and through these algorithms, we just have to stop buying into it. We have to stop.
Yeah. Make it a point to stop buying into it. You can look at the news, but here's the thing. Learn to rise above body consciousness. That was the main message of my master and of his master before, and of Swamiji before that, going back in Indian lineages that stretch back before the memory. Learn to withdraw from the senses. Learn to die before death overtakes you, so you can begin to live and love without any boundaries. You see, rising above body consciousness is an art that comes with meditation. We literally learn to withdraw the sensory currents from your feet, up your legs, through your arms. It's a science, and all the way up to the seat of the soul, back behind the eyes. You leave just enough life force in your body, because you purified your body after years of meditation. And then the master will come in and he'll take you up. He'll take you up above your body. And you get a glimpse at the scenery of what you saw before you incarnated. And it's breathtakingly beautiful up there. I've had experience of it. And it's just like in the Revelation, John says, and I was, hanging out one morning, and suddenly I heard a voice say, "Come up here." And that's what happens. You're taken above body consciousness, literally. And you'll come face to face with what the Revelator described as the flower of life, which is the presence or the conscious beauty of heaven. And you see just a vision of things that you can't describe when you come back, that are all part of the reality. This world is not the reality of the world that the souls live in. But it's removed from us to test us. That's why we're given these bodies. It's all a big, beautiful test, so that when you fail and you regret it, that's heard. And they'll make you a little better. The masters will. But when you really resign to rising above body consciousness, just like St. Paul said, "I die daily." What did he mean by that? Well, he was an initiate of Christ. He learned to leave the body, not astral projection kind of leave, not where you could appear in other places, but literally he rose into the hands, into the bosom of life, and became fully immersed in pure love, like an ocean of thick, life-giving love and light. And then, when you take your full and you're anointed again, Then you come back into the body very gently. And your every vein, every cell of your body is filled with literally the holy water. You become what's called the Holy Ghost. You are the astral body. You're no longer the physical body. You're the body that's tuned in. And that's how Christ was able to do his healings. Because he was always saturated with the love of his Father, which is that which you rise into. So the first life is being born in this body. The second life is being baptized in the Holy Logos, you see, because that essence, that water, which is in every tear that you cry, when you learn to rise above, that is what gives you the ability to know yourself. And that's what gave Christ the ability to not know himself, but to know the Father, to know the truth. And so when he said, I and my Father, or my Father and I, are one and the same, he meant it as an act of personal experience. But it's not something that we all don't have, that we can't have. It's just something that we can only have if we give up the pleasures of the senses. And it's worth it because you're given everything in return for just giving up everything that's in this world. Give up the foods you don't need to eat. Give up the sex you don't need to have. Give up the drink you don't need to drink. And I think you know who I'm talking about. And give up the drugs that are prescribed by your physician. If even then, do what makes you feel good in the sense of bringing you back closer to the truth. You'll always feel good after you meditate. Better than you smoke the best pot. The best pot gives you a sweet spot for a moment or two. The best cocaine will put you in that sweet spot. The best of anything that you're good at. Making that basket, You can't miss. You can shoot without looking behind your head. You can make a hit. You can be the Pete Rose of 500. You can do anything when you're in the sweet spot. And you get there by drinking the water of life, which is the word, which is heard, first on the right side. And this is nothing of the devil. The devil is the mind. You see, there's no person that's the devil, or, they say that the archangel not Gabriel, but Michael was supposed to be, it was mistakenly like Jesus, and he overcame Satan, or what's his name? Lucifer. You see, Michael and Lucifer are the twin ingredients of the water of life, you see. The two of them cancel each other out. And Jesus is the embodiment of what their brotherhood creates, you see. It's all very mystical, but there's a science there. And as long as there's a teacher of that science on the earth, everybody can stay well. Let's move on. Oh, wait a minute, we got to explain this one.
Yeah.
This explains the formula for making what they used to call the Philosopher's Stone. And it's the Pythagorean theorem. Pythagoras was named after the python, and I, for one, believe that this is the image that Pythagoras may have used, which is also the image of the celestial serpent, which is the same one that they used here in eastern North America long ago. It just spread all over the world, and it was made by the ancestors of Native American people. Not Cherokee, not Ojibwe, It was the people that lived here that were Native American, which all of you divided into so many different factions that none of you really have but a fraction or a part of the truth that your ancestors knew. So I bid you all come together at Serpent Mound. And each of you has a part of that. Let's contribute. Let's have a big powwow and come together at Serpent Mound or somewhere that's convenient for everyone. The Serpent Mound's a good place because it's very symbolic. And we'll put the puzzle together. We'll begin to, well, anyway, the square of 6, which is in the upper left, or the square of 3, is symbolic of the sun, because around the sun, 6 equal circles, the same diameter as the sun, can be made. It passes by way of Mercury, which is the square of 8 up there, the upper right, and they both congeal into the square of 10, because the square of 6 is worth 36, right? 6 times 6. The square of 8 is 64, 8 times 8. And 36 and 64 make 100, right? And 10 by 10, which is the square of 5 or 10, is 100. So when the serpent line to true north puts its gong, its big sun disk, into the sulfur or the sun and combines with the Mercury, they combine intimately in the same way as Lucifer and Michael, and they make the water of life, or the philosopher's stone, which is said to be like a powder that grants acute healing ability and a sort of bringing of the truth into the mind. So the Satan isn't a person. Satan is the mind. It's the universe, and the little mind is what we think of as our thinking mind. It's based upon the brain, but the brain is run through like a magnetic field by a series of nerves that are so cleverly endowed with this nervous fluid, which is a form of the mana, and that it creates a field about it, which dowsers know about, because anything within that field can collect information that the brain can feed into the conscious appreciation. But it also gives you the ability to think correctly, to solve problems, and to do all the things that you do with the mind, which sometimes strays and does bad things if you don't keep it under control. So that's why Christ and other of the great masters gave us prayer, or remembrance of God or the universe, also called Simran, to keep the mind busy. Keep the mind busy so that it becomes your servant. So, get thee behind me, serpent. You know what I'm talking about. That's what Christ said. Get thee behind me. And the understanding of the serpent being given something to do is no more better depicted than in the Pythagorean theorem. Let's go on to the next one.
Well, I think that might be our last graphic on that. Yeah, I think it is. I think
Okay,
that's
we
our
didn't
last
get
one.
the long star field then.
The long star field?
Must have taken that out. No, I think we did remove that, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Anybody who wants to learn more about that, pick up a copy of Star Mounds.
Yeah.
This is what it looks like. I don't want to advertise myself, but it's there. You can get it easily.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, what would you like to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about sort of the healing practices of Christ and the things that, me growing up Catholic, and you hear about the miracles and all these things. As I got older, I started hearing stories about, the lost years of Jesus and some of his travels to India, perhaps, travels to, the area of St. Michael's Tor, and a lot of these places are connected with mounds. and dragon lines and serpent stuff.
Why?
And I would love for you to kind of go into that. We talked a little bit about some of that stuff on the phone, and I really wanted to save it for today.
We talked a little last night. That was a good conversation. John Michel was a natural philosopher from Britain. I think he may have been an Englishman. He said that he was the one that discovered the St. Michael's line. And it's because a lot of churches that bore the name of St. Michael were all on a perfectly straight line that went pretty much down, I guess, the south part of England and down the backbone.
And they were former serpent cult.
Yeah, and they had
areas.
backgrounds.
Yeah.
You see the same thing in Mexico.
Yeah.
And we have a gigantic...
They build churches on top of those
right,
sites.
Because those are sites that once manufactured the medicine.
Yeah.
And those were sites where people went to enjoy the paradise that was available to them so long as there was a strong amount of the medicine being saturating the landscape. So they did the same thing they did it all over the world, but it was long, long ago, perhaps millions of years ago, that the whole planet was once freed of its illusionary coating, and it was just a pure paradise. And those were the times of the Titans, and there were 12 of them, 6 female and 6 male, and the 6 Titans, or the 12 Titans, pardon me, all had temples devoted to them, and they were just represented as these long 2,160 ages. And their temples were all over the planet, and they put these mighty, this is a way to get the mechanical process started. They put these great weights beneath their temples, and these really heavy, long, pillars, and they connected up with these powerful gyroscopic machines that were hooked up to a system of power that was never diminished. And so they were able to take the electrical generation of the planet and attract it to the underbellies of these temples. And it's the same thing that they did with the churches and the Manitous in North America, but they were more powerful in those days because there was nothing inhibiting them. Like we have a great crust on the earth now, which slows everything down.
Isn't it true that sound vibration has a lot to do with not just earthworks and mounds in Ohio, but just ancient sites in general, to where, there's these resonant codes, if you will, to where these places vibrate. And I feel like sound is kind of an important, even the stones that are in the center of Stonehenge, those are highly resonant, and people have been able to play drums in those circles and create sort of this resonant field. What do you think sound plays a part in these ancient sites and healing practices?
Well, the sound is always available, but the first place you should contact it is inside you. You should listen to the sound current. It's what all the masters teach when the soul gets ready, when the person is ready to progress inward. You listen to the sound because it pulls your attention inward. And it's a very pretty sound. The word is like a lamp unto my feet. There are, of course, two versions of it. What they call in India, the Varn Atmik, which means the speech. They also call it the Logos from the Greeks. There's many different names for it. But they also, instead of Varn Atmik, they also have the Dun Atmik, which is the Dun, which is the subtle or internal sound, Atmik, or communicative sound. And so these two comprise the variations, but the inner one is the one that the saints refer to as the Word of God, you see, the thing that holds all the worlds together and in harmony with one another. So that even though you may hear astronomers say, well, these these galaxies collided, and there was once a big bang. I will tell you that people that live in the astral world hear a completely different story in the astral cosmos, which is much, much larger than the physical cosmos. I can't say much enough because it's so large that it's 50 times larger than the physical, at least. Maybe 100, and we don't know how large the physical is yet. Because Yukteswar, among others, if you read him in his Holy Science, says that there is the center of the physical universe, which is like a great sun. They call it the central sun, and we can't detect it yet with our telescopes. We haven't been able to pick up. It's like a great blue sun, and it's got a very powerful magnetic field. And all of the galaxies rotate around it in the same way as, I guess, stars rotate in a galaxy around a central area. So we don't know how many galaxies there are. It's in the trillions. And think how much, well, anyway, the truth isn't in the physical. The truth is in the higher levels where we live to be much older once we've given up the physical form. And then there's another universe above that, which is practically infinite in size, but still slightly limited, which is called the causal, which never fades, never goes out of existence, and is very pure. And we live in that universe in our purest form, which is kind of like just a super soul form, which we have all the elements of seeing and hearing and tasting and touching and feeling, but we don't have the bodies taking those energies from the soul and adding life to us. So there's the physical body, the astral body, or the body of the ghost, which we inhabit after the physical body falls off. And then after the astral body, which has stages of purification, we have the body of the knowledge, which is kind of like an all-knowing body of what exists in the astral and physical. And then we tap into the true causal sphere, where we become perfected souls with a sense of individuality separate from the creator. And then when we give up the causal, we merge with all the other master souls in a perfectly clear and absolutely indescribably joyous sphere where the creator dwells. And that's where the souls are made. And we can retain a sense that we have identities, but we still feel in union with the love, with the beloved there. So then we can come back into the causal, and then we can drop down into an archangelic form, which has wings and so forth. It's very powerful. Oftentimes they have no need of feet, but they could manifest feet because they can manifest anything. And then the astral body, which is the true form of man, and that's called the manas, not the manas, but the Anamaya Kosh, that's right, is the physical. Prana Maya Kosh is the energetic or the ghost body. And then and that'll have to come back to me also, because I've been under the weather of late, and my brain isn't feeding me everything correctly at this time. But anyway, we have basically 3 bodies, or 4, if you want. And to come into the physical body is said to be a great blessing, because here we suffer the pangs of separation the most. And we feel gravity the most harshly. And in fact, gravity is the culprit for most of the diseases we suffer, along with the mind getting out of control, without the discipline of prayer and memory, and remembrance. So we have to remember, keep the mind under control, and try to alleviate the gravity that's on our internal organs, causing them to sag, getting food trapped in the intestine, causing filth to remain in us, by bringing in enough light to extend our life expectancy and alleviating the effects of gravity, which is a light compound, on the human body. And right now our science doesn't know how to create anti-grav yet, but we'll get there. And then if we have perfect food made by mana, then the trees and bushes and vines that grow that food all contain the true light. In fact, in paradise, it's said that at night, when there's a twilight out, the plants and trees, they all have glowing leaves, and fruits on the trees, they all have a subtle light to them. If you eat that food, that will extend your life expectancy way past 100 years to the age of Noah and the age of Methuselah and Adam. There was a whole society of people here in the eastern North America, United States and Canada, that understood that science well enough to live to be 800 to 1,000. And
the Book of Kings, the Egyptians, and the Sumerian Book of Kings. There's just, thousands of years of rain, and they say, archaeologists and scholars say, oh, well, that's just myth, that's their legend. Same thing with some of the ancient Vedic texts where they talk about, civilizations that spanned 30,000 years in ancient times with rulers for thousands of years, one guy. And then, you have where these rulers were living extremely long, but like Osiris was able to actually bring himself back. And so these are technologies, right? Is that what these sites
Osiris,
are machines?
Yeah. Well, he reincarnated, but it does have analogous information that goes with these stories that have to do with the secrets that have been maintained in secret societies, having to do with the perfection of the soul of man and the establishment of the pure land. Again, the closer you get to these states of consciousness, the more the darkness leaves. So this is not an evil thing. There are always going to be people out there who their minds will trick them into thinking that don't listen to these people that spout this knowledge. We don't know any. Well, you do, but you have to read more and you have to meditate, you see.
And there's people tomorrow that are going to be out there pulling demons from the Serpent Mound, apparently.
Yeah.
So
I heard about that.
So I watched that video. Terri shared that with me, and I was not surprised at all. But you have these kind of conditions that some people are just raised with, and they see these symbols of serpents, and they think, oh, that's the devil. That's what I learned in Bible school when I was a kid. The serpent's the devil. So, I think there's a lot of conditioning and some programming that we all need to kind of get over. And I think right now, people are either crawling under a rock and sticking their head in the sand, or they are evolving consciously and are able to see. The problem is there's a lot of disinformation right now. The internet's kind of out of control with a number of conspiracy theories to, this QAnon and a lot of this stuff at Flat Earth, and I feel are distractions to the greater truth. This kind of information, to me, is what will get you that truth, not sitting there watching YouTube videos about, name whatever's the latest conspiracy out there.
This is not a plug for a product, but if you ever have an upset stomach like I have right now, Reed's ginger ale is really good for that. So
we're going to get them to sponsor the next episode.
So anyway, are we close to wrapping it up? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think that was amazing, Ross. I want to thank you again. Thank you for inviting us into your home. I mean, that was just excellent. And
It's my pleasure.
yes, sir, absolutely. Yeah. I'm just going to sign off real quick. Guys, it's been an awesome... go ahead, Ross.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah, no problem. I wanted to thank everybody again for joining us tonight, this afternoon, and this evening. I want to thank, again, Michael Toohey, Thomas Johnson, Ross Hamilton, and of course, Terri Rivera. Without her, none of this would be possible. Thank you, Terri. You're the best. And we hope to keep bringing you more of these. If you guys enjoy this content, follow The Strange Road on Crowdcast. Follow Tom and Terri's sites, House of Fake Cops, and the Serpent Mound Star Knowledge groups and pages. And we love doing these and want to keep doing them. So thank you guys so much for everybody's thirst for knowledge, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.